Do you want this one? It's too sweet for me.
Oh, stab me.
I didn't.
That was your perfect chance to.
I know, but I'm not that mean.
Got it on video. Hey, what's going on, Average Joes? Today on Booze and Books, we're talking about books that left a sour taste in your mouth while having sours. All right, so I think this was your idea. I don't remember.
Yes.
Yes,
It's
okay,
me.
take credit. All right. So we all have books that you read them, either you enjoy them, or in general there were things that you didn't like, or the ending didn't stick well with you, whatever, but it left a sour taste in your mouth. And what better to go with those than sours? I am drinking a whiskey sour. She is drinking a tequila sour. And just to go over the drink really quick, not in depth, because apparently people don't care for that. Sour is basically 2 to 1 of a liquor, a or two, and then a sour or with citrus, one lemon, lime, sometimes grapefruit, a little bit of sweet to balance it out. And then the important component for the froth is egg white. There's egg white substitutes out there. I'm not going to list them, but that's what you do. You shake vigorously. You get this nice little foam, get a little garnish and some bitters on top. Good to go. So sours, I enjoy them. We've had some plenty of variations when you go to speakeasies and stuff. That's what a sour is, drink wise. No. So getting on to the books. Books that left a sour taste in your mouth. So there's definitely a lot of books that have endings where you wish it didn't end a certain way, or the twist might have not been good for you, or maybe it was even a series that you're going through the series and it's just like that. Maybe the final book was just like, didn't do it for me. So we're going to get into some of the main books that left a sour taste in our mouth or sour feeling afterwards, where we just weren't a little bitter about it. A little bitter about it. How many do you have?
A few. And then some honorable mentions.
Okay. So I'm going to come out firing actually first, because it's one that I told her about and you weren't a fan, and it's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And it's hard to tell about some of these sour tasting ones, especially half of mine are going to have spoilers, so I can't say too much, but Agatha Christie has some really, really good twists with her books. There are some of hers that, like, the twists really are fantastic. She's really good at weaving them in, and they usually fit really, really well and make the story really know. Murder of Roger Ackroyd, I felt was kind of cheap, and I wasn't a fan, but I know you really love it, so this is just my opinion of it. I was recently commenting with somebody on their video, and they felt the same way about Roger Ackroyd. That the ending, that it was really, really good leading up, but then the ending just didn't quite, that the twist didn't quite seal it. So I really want to talk to more people about it, but obviously you can't until you read it. So I know a lot of people have been wanting to read Agatha Christie more lately. So everybody, just somebody go buy Roger Ackroyd, read it. It's only like 270 pages, it's super short, and it's a mystery, and you're going through the mystery. You'll read it in like a day or two, and then we can talk about it. 'Cause I want to talk about it. I want to see what other people think about that.
So it's funny because at first I was very torn. Like I didn't know how to feel about it. And then the more I thought about it, the more I felt like it was just genius. It was just genius. Like it's not, it's just good. It's different.
Once or twice, it kind of hit my mind, but I was like, no, she can't do that. No, she just no. Yeah. So that's my first one.
So I loved that book. I thought it was awesome. And so I went and I read the first one in the Poirot series for Agatha Christie called Mysterious Affairs at Styles. And this is actually one of my honorable mentions, but since we were talking about Agatha Christie, I figured I'll just throw it in there. I felt like it was almost very obvious who done it per se, but the reasoning and the twist that went with it was good. But since I kind of already had figured out who had done it, I was kind of disappointed. I thought, because I thought The Murder of Roger Ackroyd was so good and the twist was so good, this one kind of let me down a little.
So it was because it was obvious and you guessed it, you were disappointed that you were right.
Yes. I wanted to be like
I guess that makes sense.
shocked and like just I wanted to be hit with like, oh, why couldn't I have figured that out, you know?
Yeah, because
But it didn't. And the reasoning and more of the story that goes behind it was more of the mystery than actually who did it. But
when you go through murder mysteries, there's usually one obvious suspect that's like, yeah, that person has the biggest motive. It makes
yes,
the most sense. So it can't be them. And then when it turns out maybe that is the twist, like, oh, it can't be them. So I get that. Seems like Agatha Christie just has, she loves her twists, she loves her endings. That's probably why we keep reading and liking her so, and why she got so big.
yeah. So I'm excited to read the next one to see how that one is compared to the other two, because the Murder of Roger Ackroyd is number 4 in the Poirot series, and then I read the first one, so it'll be interesting to see how the second and the third one go. So my actual book, first one on the list, was Never Die. You loved this one.
Yeah. The ending does have a huge twist, and it is kind of a really cool reveal. I thought you said you liked the ending, though. You didn't like up until then.
Yes.
Because there was a lot of action.
No, it wasn't because there was a lot. I think it was because there was action, but it was also a lack of action. So it spent more time on gathering the team, and it felt like the story actually took a really long time to develop. And I didn't like that. That I didn't like. So that kind of put me off until the end of it, and then the end of it was really good. I also found it really hard for me to kind of relate. So
how are you going to relate?
Well, like to any of the characters, like none of the characters I felt like were amazing to me.
I don't really care about relating to characters, but I guess I could see that. The second guy you meet, he was probably only entertaining you. Well, I guess was Iron Gut Chen, he's also good. But I mean, they're just when you assemble a crew, I guess you kind of have to space out your development of them, and it was only like 300 some pages.
Yeah. And it just felt like they spent the entire time gathering the crew, and the story didn't really develop very much, and so that was hard for me.
That ending was fantastic. I actually think you would like the next book in the series in that world.
I didn't know it was a series.
Yep, it is starting to be an entire world. The Mortal Inch.
No, not
Mortal Techniques. I would do that. The Mortal Techniques
series.
Yeah, and Pawn's Gambit. It is really good, and because it's pretty much just one POV. You're going through it, so you get to know her a lot. We're not really a team. She's part of a contest, so
be better.
Also had a good twist at the end, but yeah, Never Die. I would. The ending was a big twist. It was really good, but I could see that. So my next one, oh man, I'll save one of those. I'll save that one for a little bit, but I have an issue with open-ended books, and that are ones I've kind of hinted at this in some recent videos, and that's ones that you have a book, and then it's like they take out the last 2 or 3 chapters. Like you're just supposed to figure it out what the last 2 or 3 chapters are. You're supposed to end the book yourself, and I just feel like that's really cheap. And coincidentally, this year I've read 2 of them, and they're both by Stephen King: The Mist and The Long Walk. They both just kind of ended abruptly, kind of in the middle of the sentence, Sopranos style, and I'm not a fan. I think if you get a book, if I'm buying a book, I want a story, a start, a middle, and an end. And I get having some debate at the end of a story. I get having some things to talk about, to think about, but not an entire, several chapters of ambiguity. I don't like that. There's some really good stories that have some cliffhangers at the end, or some things left unsaid that are good. But this was literally, I can't even say it because I don't really want to say spoilers, but still, it was just kind of in the middle of a sentence, sort of end, done. We're going here, and then it's just like the book ended. Not a fan. I think it's cheap. I think you incompleted a story. It reminds me of Elf. In his dad, he makes children's books, and he signed off, and he's like, yeah, whatever, this is done, and then he gets in trouble because the kids don't know what happened to the pigeon and something else. That's basically how I feel with these stories. Yes. So I think those open-ended books I'm just not a fan of. So this is just in a general grouping. Those are just 2 specific ones that I've read this year. Trying to think of some others have you read any that just kind of end abruptly?
So here's the thing with me and in general in life. If it wasn't something that was awesome or something that was terrible, I don't remember it. Like I don't remember the middle things. So like going through books and like trying to make these lists has been really, really hard for me because before I started keeping a list of books, I can't remember what books I read. And unless it was really, really good or really, really bad, to the point where like I've even been going through my list and I'm like, I don't remember reading this book at all. And it was last year and I can't remember this. So
I usually scroll through Goodreads and be like, okay, yeah, I guess that one fits. That one fits maybe.
yeah. So I can't help you.
All right.
So my next one is A Princess for Christmas. So you remember when you got that box set of books and you were so excited because we were going to get Christmas
Oh
books?
God,
And
that's so disappointing.
being two girly books that you would never read. And I was like, well, you spent money on them, so I'm going to read them.
Basically Hallmark books.
Yes, they're basically Hallmark books. So one book was okay, and the other one was just not my cup of tea. It was a love story. It was your
Hallmark.
yeah. It reminded me of like, oh, there's so many. Like all of those princess, like the Prince movies on
Probably has that
Netflix.
same actress that does like 3.
It's that one.
Yep.
Same story, except for the girl is the princess, obviously not the prince, and the guy meets her and all those circumstances. It was completely like it's done a million times. Your average story. I read the whole thing because it was short, but not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I was really disappointed when we got that box
Super disappointed.
because it was like a company that does like fantasy sci-fi and whatever boxes, and then it was like, oh hey, we have an annual Christmas one that we do. It's like awesome. I'd love to have some sort of either mystery or fantasy themed environmental thing. And I opened the box, it's like, okay, we got this nice candle, which I think that's the candle,
Yeah.
and some other things. And then the books, what the hell is this crap? And I just threw them under the tree.
Yep.
Disappointed.
It's totally disappointed. So
all right, get into my more hotter one, hot takey one, or whatever. This is a series that left a sour taste in my mouth. That's the First Law. First Law trilogy. Everybody loved this one. Everybody talks about it. It's all on the top list. I have mentioned before that it does not meet the hype for me. For me, I know a lot of people love it. If you love it, that's great. But just all the hype that's been built around it did not meet it. The reason why this trilogy, this first trilogy, that's all I've read so far is the first trilogy. It left a sour taste in my mouth because it didn't meet the hype, and then because of some of the character endings in the trilogy. So like the first book is basically an extended prologue, introductory lead-in book, which, you know, say what you will, even if you disagree, you're probably wrong. Eric just read it, my brother-in-law, and he was like, is this the author's first book ever? I feel like nothing happened. Like he was bored with it. He almost didn't continue it. So first book, not much happens. It's fine. I was fine with it. I was still into it. Second book was probably my favorite. It's when you actually see the characters come together. There's actually development. There's some growth. They bond. They do all those, you know, normal character development things. And then in the third book, I'm okay with characters either regressing or normally books will have like character arcs. This one, there's a few characters that basically go full circle and return back to where they were in the beginning, which is different. It's cool. I like seeing those different things. So as a whole, it wasn't bad, but one or two of them, but specifically one character, their growth was okay. They start to get better and better and cool. Like the growth starts in book 2, and then in book 3, they really get their growth really is awesome, and their story builds. And then right at the end, it just takes a nosedive, and the author's just like, nope, you're going back to square one. You're done. And I was just like, that's kind of ruined character development. I understand having some go full circle, and you know, it's probably something in there as to, you know, people are who they are. They're not going to change, but I think some people needed to change in this book, and that didn't sit well with me. Him, and then there was another character who, also in the second book, they started to have a growth as well and got better and better. And then by the end of the story, it turned out they were completely irrelevant to the story. Literally, if they were in the story, it probably would have turned out the same. Their one role was hold this, and that is their whole thing through the whole trilogy. And that did not sit well with me. So you have a useless character, you have a character that should have had growth, but basically was just like, nope, like that. And then everybody else was fine. I get what everything they went through. I like that. But that just left a sour taste in my mouth to where, like, okay, book one, cool, we're building. Book two, awesome, great. We're going up there. Book three, okay, it's fine, it's fine. It's what the hell? And I was like, well, that's a letdown. So that is a beloved series by many. It is in their top lists, a lot of them, but it just, yeah, didn't end as well as I want. And not that I need neat, pretty, tidy endings. There's two of the character arcs I didn't like, and I think I'm not alone either.
I've read many books like that where you're disappointed in the characters.
I mean, it's fine to have some disappointing characters that just like, oh man, I just wanted so much better for you.
Yeah.
But one of them was completely wasted art. The other one was just completely pointless.
Yeah. You're so angry about this. You're very angry.
I'm passionate because so I just I don't know, maybe I'm just defensive about it because so many people love it, and I just want to get my point across that
It's not as great as everybody thinks it is.
I mean, I can't say that because if you love something, because Roger Ackroyd, I can't
Yeah.
tell you it's not as great as you think it is. It's your own
Right.
opinion, but I just have counterpoints to bring up that I feel strongly about. And maybe it's just because whenever something is so hyped up and doesn't meet it, I'm just
Disappointed?
yeah. Nipply bit.
So my next two books, I actually never finished. So they left such a sour taste in my mouth that I wrote them off. I
Those are big
probably
books that
finished them.
I've seen set down around the house, and you're just like, yeah, I'll get back to it.
Yep. And I never got back to them. Sometimes I get back to them. Sometimes I do. But these I just couldn't. So the first one is The Clockmaker's Daughter. There are too many storylines. There's like what's going on now and what's going on in the past, and they don't seem to intertwine at all. So it doesn't make any sense. I don't.
That one has bad reviews too.
Yes, and the author is like it's a contemporary book. And the author has some awesome books. I've read so many of her books, and they're all really, really good. But this one was just terrible. The characters are terrible. The story is terrible. Just not good. It wasn't good. And then the second one is The Labyrinth of the Spirits.
I do want to read this, but I guess we'll see.
So it is actually the third in a series. I did not know that.
Yeah.
However, apparently you don't have to read them in order. It's boring. The characters that were in the other books, the two prior books. So I read some reviews to figure out like, is it worth reading and going forward? And the characters that were in the books, the two books prior apparently have no significant role in this particular book. It's develops very, very slow. Like I was halfway through the book and I still was like, what is the point of this? Like, what is happening? Nothing is happening. And then the opening mystery, according to a lot of reviews, the opening mystery in the very beginning of the book just never goes anywhere. It's like the author started writing the book and then lost his train of thought.
That's not an important mystery.
And it like goes in a completely different direction. So I'm okay with not finishing that. I feel like it's not worth the time. And there's so many other books to read. So
they have another book, that same author. I've seen it.
He's seen a ton. He has a ton of books or maybe not a ton, but there's
Spanish. Yeah.
And there's, like I said, this is the third in the series, and apparently the first two are really, really good. But this one not so much.
So I have two more left. One I'm just going to mention briefly. That's Out. That is the Japanese murder mystery that I mentioned before. That it was cool to go along for a ride. It was very fresh. It was very new because typically murder mysteries trying to figure out who murdered them, but in this one, who who murdered them, one of the wives murdered her husband, and then the other wives are trying to help her get away with it. So that was cool, but until the very end, when things developed and like just at the end of the last two chapters, awful, completely ruined any kind of character development. And all the reviews were just like, well, it was great until that last chapter or two. So that one I'll just mention real quick. Next one, Turn of the Key. This is a thriller that was really popular last year. We still own it. I almost got rid of it because I read it and didn't like the ending, but I'm interested to see what you think about it. People have been hit and miss about this one as well, but I know I've seen a lot of people that really, really like it. I'm not a fan. It's one of those thrillers where the protagonist is a liar, like just a pathological liar. They lie to themselves, they lie to the people around them, and you only discover the lies till the end. And you're like, well, okay, that's nice, okay. But then there's also a ambiguous twist at the end, which I didn't mind so much. That was one that the ending was okay, how it was wrapped up. There was ambiguity. You don't know if and what quite happened, but there's a lot of why, and also the fact that I don't know how much I can say. Either way, this one it didn't really sit well with me because of the main character. I just did not like, and it's not that much about not liking the main character; it's how they were written that I didn't like. And I'm discovering this now more and more is that what makes a thriller and a mystery is how flawed the human is. I think the more flawed a human is, the more of a thriller it is, because it's not about the plot, it's about how flawed this person is, and that makes it so they're making the issue, not the actual plot. Versus the mystery is just the plot is making the issue, and you're just along with the ride with the protagonist. And I'm just not a fan of when the entire plot hinges on a flawed human.
The other book out that you mentioned, it reminds me of a book that I read a couple of years ago where it basically started now, the book that I read, or it started like in the future and then worked itself. You remember me telling you about it? It started like now and then it worked itself back to the past instead of like starting in the past and working itself back.
I vaguely remember, yeah.
I don't know what book it was, but I remember that was really, really good and different because I'd never read a book.
You haven't before. We might still own it.
It was like backwards. And so like I had a hard time like getting into it because it was so weird. But then at the end I enjoyed it. I thought it was very different. I can't remember what book it was though.
Look, I still own it.
We probably
I don't know
though. So I have a couple honorable mentions. Basically the last two books in the Caravel series. I mentioned this before. I feel like the last two books are basically the first book told again and again in a different way. Mm-hmm. And that was very frustrating.
So book one and you're done.
You read book one and you're done.
Cool.
I feel like
yeah.
Because book one is it's nice and it's a fairy tale book, you know what I mean? But then it's just the same thing over and over again. And the main character, Tella, she's not the main character in the first one, Scarlet is, but she is in the second one and in the third one. And she is just a terrible character. I just don't like her. And then another one, Ink and Bone. Not my favorite so far, but it's the first in a series. So I feel like there was a lot of character building and it was kind of slow, but I think it's going to get better. So it's about all these kids go to this school to learn how to be bookkeepers, basically. You know me and my love for books.
You just pick one up.
So they're bookkeepers and they're supposed to keep people. So basically in this society, they have all the hard copy series of books in like libraries, and then everybody else gets electronic copies. And then people try to steal the hard copy books so that they can have those hard copy books because apparently they can be sold and they're nice to have because nobody has them. And then there's people who want those books who actually eat them, which is really weird. Anyway.
New way to consume.
Yeah.
To consume the knowledge.
And so like these people go in and they go into people's houses and they steal these books or take these books that they're not supposed to have. And like, so it's good. It's really good, and it's about this specific kid and who's chosen to go to the school to become one of those people who keeps the books, and um, it could get really good, but it could be a bit bad. So I'm curious to get to the second one to kind of figure out how it's gonna go.
Would you say there's any specific component in a book that you usually don't like to see?
I think so, like you said, when the character development. Okay, so a book that has a character that seems to be an important character and then turns out that that character doesn't matter. That's very frustrating. Very frustrating.
So I feel like you're taking a dig at Faithful and the Fallen. Because there are some
I wasn't, didn't even cross my mind.
there are some okie dokes, which I understand with like, hey, I'm reading for this POV in book one. I should get attached because they're going to be there for a while. Oh, no, they're dead.
Well, but you could say that about basically any of the Game of Thrones series too, because he kills them off left and right. You're like,
And
what
like,
the heck matters?
like off page, you won't hear from them for several chapters, and they're like, "Oh, hey, is that so and so's head on a pike?" Yep.
Yes.
So I think, in that sense, I could say getting frustrated and get jarring and emotional, but I also think it works because like it keeps you on your toes.
Well, so when you're reading from multiple POVs, yes, I could see how that works. But when you have this character who you think is going to be super important throughout the book, and then all of a sudden doesn't, like, in all honesty, at the end of the book, contributed nothing, and you're like, oh, like why did I read about that person?
It's kind of like, in at least to me, in the Greatcoats, the lady, the girl,
Yeah.
chapter, like the
Yes.
chapter with him, like she appears throughout the entire series, but I don't think she actually, like, once or twice she has a contribution, but I don't think she really makes that much of a, her character turns, it develops, but at the end of the day, I don't know if she really mattered that much. She was just kind of there. She was just kind of there as a extra for Falkio,
Yeah.
and she didn't even add that much to me.
Yeah. I think the other
I can't
thing,
even remember her name.
let's see what else bothers me in a book. Major turnoff. Well, like I said, with both the Clockmaker's daughter and the Labyrinth of Spirits, they both had
Different timelines.
different timelines, but the timelines never seemed to match up and make any sense or like move the story forward. They were just two separate timelines, two separate stories. Like, why would you tell two separate stories in one book? Like, I'm having a hard enough time keeping track of this first story. Why are you gonna try and tell me a second one too?
Hey, I guess they got to merge at some point, but you need to have something to tether them
Right.
to string you along. Like,
And if there's no tether, if there's no like, if there's not one of the same characters in it, or something that's happening in the timeline that coincides, like
devious.
right, but that's her trying to figure out the mystery that happened way back when. So those actually mash up, whereas these, like, nothing. It's like, why am I reading two separate stories in one book? This makes no sense, and neither story is very entertaining. So
It's funny how much we read. We're not very patient readers.
no,
We need more to
I guess
happen.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need something pulling me along, or pushing me along, or something that's like gonna, like, something to hang on to, whether it's a character or the storyline, which is like something that I'm very, very interested in, or is like something's developing and something's happening. And
That's like books with really long, flowery prose where they go on for several pages just to describe the scene and describe what's going on.
I wind up like skimming it and then like getting through it as
right.
fast as possible, because if it's not interesting and it's not going to hold my interest, I don't want to waste time on it.
Yeah. I don't need to walk into a room and perfectly picture everything in my four walls surrounding. I just, like, if you walk into a room with a character, have them walk in, have them see something, see the scene. Okay, cool. Note it. Well, take another steps. Think of something else that's in the scene. Have it go along with the narrative that's happening. Not, okay, let's walk into a room and let's just describe everything like you're a tour guide going through.
I mean, I don't even like doing that on tours.
So clearly, these were books that left a sour taste in our mouth, and we had to work out a little bit of our
Frustration.
frustrations with it. were empty. So, what are some books that left a sour taste in your mouth? Whether it's the ending, whether it's the arcs, whether it's the book or the series in general. What was something that after you finished, you were kind of bitter about it, kind of bitter about something that you read? Let me know, and we'll talk about it more in the comments.